You mentioned foods that can hurt fertility. I would
Yeah,
love to know what you.
sure. Interestingly, there is a lot of overlap between things that we're concerned about in pregnancy as well. So caffeine beyond a certain limit can start throwing off hormone balance. So that is one where you want to be careful with the quantity of caffeine that you're consuming and just notice whether or not it's throwing off your menstrual cycle parameters. That's often like the easiest, simplest, and free way to see whether it's throwing anything off. Excessive amounts of alcohol can also interrupt hormone balance. It tends to drive up estrogen, which when that gets beyond a certain level, that can be a bit problematic, but moreover, you're also kind of stressing your liver out and trying to detoxify it. So a lot of women and men notice improvements in their fertility when they significantly reduce or even cut out the alcohol. Some other ones that can be issues are foods that overly spike your blood sugar, and specifically the really refined processed carbohydrates. So all of our like added refined sugars, the corn syrup, the white sugar, the refined starches like white flour, white rice. I know a lot of people that's like a traditional food, so I hate to call out white rice, but we have to keep the portion in check because it is a really big blood sugar spiking food. So a little white rice is like, there's nothing in it that's going to kill you or anything. But if you have like meals that are based around a really big bowl of rice, cup and a half of rice, no matter what, you're going to be seeing a really significant blood sugar spike with that. So I like, moderating the quantity of some of those more refined carbohydrates so you're not experiencing as significant and as frequent of blood sugar spikes is really important. Another one is the quality of fats that you're consuming. So an excessive amount of the omega-6 rich vegetable oils, or now everybody's calling them seed oils, can be an issue. It throws off our omega-6, omega-3 balance in our body, and it also tends to cause inflammation. They're just really sensitive to an exposure to air and light, and they've also undergone a ton of processing before they even make it into the bottle at the grocery store. Not to mention the heating that they experience when they're, being heated up in a deep fryer to fry French fries or whatever. So I really encourage people to do their best to minimize the amount of those oils that they're consuming. We're talking like soy oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, the regular sunflower oil, any of these really high omega-6 oils, which tend to be the ones in a lot of our processed foods. They're really not doing our bodies any favors. The trans fats also are no good, although those have been significantly reduced from the food supply once we had mandatory labeling about 12 years ago that went into effect. So I don't really have to like educate on that very much because they're just not in the food supply. And lastly, I would say excess of soy can be an issue, especially not traditionally fermented soy products. So I'm not worried about some like organic tamari or some miso or some tempeh, but when people are getting a lot of soy, especially in the more like processed soy protein isolate powders, bars, shakes, that whole thing, soy milk, it really can throw off our hormones. So they are the richest source of phytoestrogens in the food supply. These are sort of plant estrogens. They can mimic natural estrogen, but they can kind of throw off the ratios of different hormones. This has been really well documented in the literature. Women who consume more soy tend to have a longer time to conceive. And for people who kind of push back on this one of the things that I go into in the soy section of Real Food for Fertility is like, how much soy is being consumed traditionally in Asia? Because everyone will be like, well, it's a traditional food. They're always consuming it, right? They actually did a study looking at how much soy is being consumed, and they standardized it to average soy protein intake. And in multiple parts of Asia, it's like 6 to 11 grams of soy protein per day. And you look at a typical American, especially a plant-based or vegan, vegetarian American, you look at like a protein bar, you're getting, 15, 20, 25 maybe grams of soy protein in that single bar. Like we're just not consuming it in a traditional way, but we're also not consuming it in traditional quantities. Like it's one thing to have a miso soup that has, seaweed and a couple little chunks of tofu floating around in it. And it's another thing to have like multiple meals based on soy protein isolate fake meats, and then the soy protein bar is a snack. It's just so much more, right, than our bodies expect to be exposed to.